When we talk about senior clients, we often talk about vulnerabilities, being susceptible to physical or emotional harm. But being of a certain age doesn't make you vulnerable. Being vulnerable makes you vulnerable. Clients of all ages who rely on advisors like you have a certain vulnerability in that they rely on your advice and place their trust in you, just as patients are vulnerable and place their trust in the advice of their doctor or me when I go to the barber who uses a straight edge razor. So age does not define vulnerability. And it's important to emphasize that being elderly does not mean being vulnerable. Although many vulnerable people are seniors, it cannot be said that all seniors are vulnerable. So, who are vulnerable people? Well, they are people who are susceptible to harm from a person of trust. Someone they know, like a friend, family member, or someone in a position of authority, or with a title or position they respect. There are variations on how a vulnerable person is defined. Canada's Federal Department of Justice defines a vulnerable person as any adult who, by nature of a physical, emotional, or psychological condition, is dependent on other persons for care and assistance in day-to-day living. The Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, IIROC, uses the same definition as the Oxford Dictionary: a person in need of special care, support, or protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. And the Foundation for the Advancement of Investor Rights, FAIR Canada, defines a vulnerable investor as older investors, persons with fluctuating or diminished mental capacity, and adults who are subject to undue influence or financial exploitation. But they all capture the common threads of vulnerable people. Vulnerabilities affect the client's ability to make decisions for reasons that can be physical, cognitive, or psychological. It may be temporary or permanent. It could be the temporary effects of a medication, the grieving process of a tragic event, the onset of an incurable disease, or the cognitive decline of the aging process. It could also simply mean the lack of support from family, friends, or community members, all of which together mean the client may be at risk of undue influence or poor decision making. Vulnerable people can include seniors, but it's important to stress that being senior doesn't necessarily make you vulnerable. You can be of the senior age and still be invincible. However, an overwhelmingly large portion of vulnerable people are also elderly. They can be persons with developmental disabilities, people with mental health issues, and sometimes physical issues requiring, for example, pain medication that at times can impair thinking. People with poor literacy, including poor financial literacy, making them particularly susceptible to financial abuse. Vulnerable people can be new Canadians who may have language barriers or mistake a deceitful person's tactics for the perception of a friendly Canadian. Or a vulnerable person could be someone who is going through a traumatic experience, which can include death, divorce, or job loss. In all the different considerations of who a vulnerable person might be, it is anyone who is susceptible to physical or emotional harm by someone they have every right to trust.